you ever find yourself wishing for that nostalgic feeling of imminent nuclear destruction that the Cold War instilled in us? Well, if you are, I've got the movie for you. Join me today as we talk about the Netflix original movie, House of Dynamite. This is the Geek Cabal channel. If you've not been here before, my name is Bobbie. And today we're going to be talking about the Netflix original movie, House of Dynamite. Now, as far as I'm aware, that is the only place you can watch this movie at the moment. Hopefully you'll see some kind of release, because it's a really good movie. I'll get to spoilers a little bit into this. But, yeah, it's I'd seen some ads for it, and then I saw that it was finally on there. Now, if you've seen some other reviews here on the channel, you know that I've got a bit of a soft spot for Cold War movies. Like the entire James Bond franchise up to a certain point. Other movies like War Games, the By Dawn's Early Light, movies like that. Movies where the entire fate of humanity hinges on single decisions here and there. Well, this movie really gave me the nostalgic feels. That reminder that even though the Cold War's over, our nuke still exists. And we're a small series of bad things happening away from nuclear destruction. So, yeah. This movie will hopefully serve as a reminder to those of us who've forgotten, and hopefully open the eyes of some of the younger folks who didn't get the thrill of learning about nuclear oblivion before you were 10. So, yeah. This movie's got it all. It's directed by Catherine Bigelow, who she's directed several good movies. The one that my favorite from among her videography is probably Near Dark. It's a vampire movie. But she also directed The Hurt Locker, I believe K-19, The Widowmaker. I didn't see that one. I heard it's good though. I need to watch it. And several others. She's a very good director. Then our cast, we have, let's see, Rebecca Ferguson. I didn't write down her character's name. I didn't write down many of these characters' names. She plays the second in command at the White House Situation Room, I believe. Part of an underground complex where they connect everyone so orders can issue, and they take care of a lot of the communications and stuff. Then her direct boss, who's Admiral something or other. Oh, by the way, she plays Lady Jessica in the newer Dune movies. Among other roles. She's been in other things. But that's the thing I most know her for, off the top of my head. Then we have Jason Clarke, who is her boss, and is also among a group of people that you see they're not designated survivors, but they have to get to certain more secure locations to ensure command and control stays up and running as long as possible. I've seen him in a number of things, but the main thing I recognize him from, he plays John Connor in Terminator Genisys. So, then, this is actually kind of a bit of a spoiler because you don't see who it is till 2/3 of the way through the movie, but you can see the cast list, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you. Idris Elba, he plays the president. And for those of you who don't know him from anything, he's Heimdall in the Thor movies. He was in, I think he's the villain in the Hobbs and Shaw Fast and Furious spin-off movie. And he's in several other things. He's a British actor, notably, playing the American president, but, it happens. At least it's not like, I can't think of his name, but he plays the president in the G.I. Joe movies, and I don't even know if he drops the British accent. Anyway. Yeah, something else. Oh, he's also in the show Ultraviolet, if you've ever seen it. Not the movie. There's a BBC show. It's 6 episodes, had to do with vampires, kind of X-Files-esque. It's a good show. But you need to watch the whole thing, because the first 4 or 5 episodes are all what appear to be totally disparate events, but they're all leading towards this big vampire master plan, and it's a doozy. And then the other notable star is Jared Harris, who plays the Secretary of Defense. He was Moriarty in the second Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movie. Also the head scientist that is actually trying to fix the problem in Chernobyl, which is excellent, and you should all check that out if you have the capacity to do so. Also Cold War related, because it was very, very instrumental in the downfall of the Soviet Union. Also shows comic corruption like no other, while also still showcasing the very true heroism of the Russians involved. So, yeah, good show all the way around. I did a review of it. I'll try to remember to link to it. But anyway, and there's other people. Like, I recognize the guy at the Missile Command Center, but I've only seen him in like one or two other things, and didn't want to write down the whole cast list because, sorry, you can look it up on IMDb. Those are the big names. Unless I totally overlooked someone else actually being famous in the show that I didn't recognize. It happens occasionally. But, yeah. So, the premise of the show is that it takes place today. And it opens with a comment about the Cold War. How at the end of the Cold War, the two sides, the two primary sides, the United States and Soviet Union, then Russia, decided that the world would probably be better off with fewer nuclear weapons in it. And that train of thought, that time, that's over. That we're now looking at a scenario where there's probably about to be more nuclear weapons. And that's the setup for the events of the movie. Now, I'm going to give some very minor spoilers. And there are going to be some bigger spoilers here in a minute. The minor spoilers are that what sets everything in motion, before I get to that, the movie is in 3 distinct chunks so that we see events from certain people's perspectives as it goes along. But because of telecommunications and everything, all those parts interlock in each section where we see the other people, but we're not seeing like someone will be on a phone call, like one of the guys who's in charge of actually mobilizing the nuclear weapons. We see him on the phone call, and then the second section is about, a lot of it's about him and what's going on there on his end. And it's not till the third section that we even see the president. So we don't even know it's Idris Elba until then. And, what he's going through. And so, we know, as we get to the second and third segments, we know some of what's going to happen, but we don't know what led up to that moment in these people's lives and their internal deliberations and things like that. So a lot of it is showing how all these people started off just a normal day, and then it wasn't so normal. And each segment is a slow but slowly increasing slide from normal to the edge of Armageddon. And it's very well done, and each section stops before the moment of truth, of which there are 2, and you got to figure out in the end what happens. So the first section deals with a group of soldiers at a base in Alaska that has an anti-missile system. And their day, everything starts, and then things escalate. And as they're talking and things are going on there, we see the people in D.C., it's intermoving between the two, and then they get into their positions. And then the second section deals with the people at I believe the base is in the middle of the country somewhere, where they are in charge of actually mobilizing the nuclear forces. It's not like Cheyenne Mountain or anything like that. It's in like Nebraska or Iowa or something. And then we also see the the deputy national security advisor, because they can't find the main guy, and see him moving around and everything. And then the third section is primarily the president, but also the Secretary of Defense. And so, like I said, they all interlock. They all start off with, it's like Secretary of Defense literally out playing golf. And it comes in, dealing meetings, and then, oh, hey, look at that. So that's how the movie's structured. And I think it's an effective structure. And I'll talk about the ending in the spoiler section, but I think it was an interesting way to show everything, so that then by the segments, like by the third segment, we just kind of see some things happening in the background, but we know what they are because of the previous segments. And so that's I think it's an interesting way to set up the structure of the movie. I will note that their people's interpersonal relationships, how they handle what they believe is about to happen, how they react. It's varied and it's all very human. Then there's a moment in the third segment with the president and the gentleman who's carrying what they call the nuclear football, the case, and the guy, he's a Navy officer, and there's a moment where the president's contemplating something, and the Navy officer, you see him do the Catholic, and the president asks him, well, did he give you an answer? He's like, no, sir, but I wasn't really asking for one, because it was more a general, please allow us to make the right decision, allow the world not to end, or if it's going to, it's been a good run, but he wasn't seeking wisdom. And the president comments, and he's like, no, I get it. It's like, I go to church. It's like, I haven't lately. And but you can tell that, like, it's one of those moments where, he even tells someone, like, I'm the one that has to make this decision. It's like, I wish I wasn't, but I do. And just knowing that he's at least probably a religious person, the thought has to be going through his mind of, like, am I, if he truly believes that this is all God's creation, like, am I going to be the one that initiates its destruction? Things like that. And it's very human, very. I'm glad they didn't try to play him off as, I'm an atheist, and none of this matters. I don't think atheists actually believe that, but like, from a cosmological standpoint, if you're, I think in that scenario, you possibly have to contemplate, because if you truly believe, then you do have to consider that you're potentially about to initiate the destruction of the creation of your creator, and having to think about that decision before you do it is probably a good thing. Although I imagine, an atheist would also think about it. I'm just saying that, I think that's the kind of thing where I think I would rather have a believer, as long as they weren't someone that somehow desired to kickstart Armageddon. Then obviously we don't want them. So, but yeah, we don't want the kill them all, let God sort them out type be in that scenario, because they may in fact kill them all of us. So you have these moments, and you've got one with the Secretary of Defense. Minor spoiler here. He is trying to get a hold of his daughter, and she's in the impact zone. And he gets a hold of her with like 2 minutes left to impact, where there's no possible way to save her. And he doesn't want to warn her, so that she dies angry and confused. She tells him that she's met somebody, and he's there in her apartment, they're going to walk to work together, and he's like, that's good, because at least she won't die alone. Because if what's going to happen, what they think is going to happen is going to happen, she's going to die. Like, it's a certainty. And so, that's rough. And then how he handles that is also very human. And I'll talk about that a little bit in spoilers, as long as I remember. But, yeah, it's a very, like I said, it's a very human story. And the title comes from something that the president says towards the end of the movie. He said he was listening to a podcast about our nuclear arsenals. And basically the way the person explained it was, we've built a house of dynamite. We've packed the walls, we've set the fuses, and we've decided to continue to live in it instead of doing something about it. And it's a pretty apt analogy. So, yeah. Anyway, I think it's an excellent movie you should check out. So, I'm going to go into the spoilers. Well, alright, I guess I didn't actually explain the very basic premise of the plot. In the opening of the movie, once things get moving, a nuclear missile is fired from somewhere in Asia. Our detection system did not detect where the launch came from. Now, this is one of the only parts of the movie I kind of find fault with, because I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, you can take the knowledge that you have of its flight path and trajectory and reverse engineer its origin point. However, even if they could, the problem is I believe that point is probably in the middle of the Pacific somewhere, which means it's probably a submarine. which means unless they know where the submarine is and can capture it or destroy it, they don't know who launched it. And that's the big question throughout the movie is who fired the missile, and if it detonates on him, if it hits and if it detonates, who do they hit back? Because they don't know who launched it. And part of it is like trying to figure out, is it the Russians, is it the Chinese, is it the North Koreans? Is it the Chinese trying to look like the North Koreans? Is it the Russians trying to look like the North Koreans, or the Chinese? You know, because even though they're technically allies, it's a very shaky alliance. So any of them would, if it could destroy the United States in the process, they would sacrifice one of their other members. So it's very shaky. And so we don't know where the missile came from. And so that's part of the president's dilemma is, do you hit back, and who do you hit, and how hard do you hit them? And I'll talk in the spoilers some of the things relevant to that. But that's the catalyst for the plot. And there are other failures that lead to certain things becoming inevitable. And once those things become inevitable, then hard decisions have to be made. And so that's the general plot of the movie. It's how characters react initially to the launch itself, then realizing that yes, it really is in all likelihood an ICBM. And once it's almost assured to hit and destroy a major city, then what now? And so, because everyone is smart enough to know that even if this is some one-off accident, if we retaliate, then whoever we fire against, unless it's North Korea, then they're going to fire everything they have at us, because obviously we're going to try to take out their command and control structures and their weapons and everything else. And it leads to inevitable escalation, which one of the characters even mentions, because some of them are like, well, if the Chinese and the Russians aren't involved, why are they mobilizing? It's like, well, because we're mobilizing to hit back whoever hit us. So they might think that we're getting ready to just hit them, even if they're not involved. They can't be sure, just like we wouldn't be able to be sure. Again, it's a terrifying prospect, because it illustrates how just a handful of systems fail, and all of a sudden we're locked in a terrible prisoner's dilemma type situation. Only instead of a few years in prison, it's, do we turn the earth into a radioactive cinder? So so if you want nightmares about nuclear war and existential dread of thinking, no, the Cold War's over, no, my friends, it has taken on new dimensions, then this is the movie you should watch. So anyway, this is where I end the non-spoiler section. So if you're jumping off here, totally understand. Check it out on Netflix. If you don't have Netflix, I hope that it comes to DVD or something. Find a friend that does have Netflix. Get Netflix for a month. Whatever you got to do, this movie's worth it. But so if you're jumping off here, thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I'll say the real spiel to the end. But yeah, you know how it goes. It's YouTube. So, unless this is also on TikTok, in which case you know how it works. This is TikTok. But anyway, so spoilers. Okay, so you've been warned. We're in the spoiler section. So the big thing is, once the missile is fired, the U.S. decides to fire interceptor missiles at it. And one of them doesn't deploy its thing, the other one misses. So and they're like, well, we'll fire more of them, right? And by the time that's happened, because of travel times and relay times and everything, it's too late. The missile's already gone, what did it say? Terminal. So it's already descending through the atmosphere. So they eventually narrowed down the target is Chicago. And each section ends with something like about a minute before impact. And their only hope at that point is that the warheads are dead. And we don't know. Because the movie ends with the president about to make his decision on what kind of, if he's going to counterattack and to who and to what extent. So we don't know what happens in Chicago. We don't know the outcome of any of it. And I see the wisdom in this, because it would take away from part of the movie's point, because at that point it's just going to be gratuitous special effects, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like to see a good nuclear apocalypse as much as anyone, but I'll just watch the end of Terminator Dark Fate or Terminator 3 to see saturation nuclear bombardment. So, yeah, so that happens. Then we see the soldiers reacting. You know, they're in charge of the missiles there, and you know, one of them's even like, "Well, we did everything right. Like we did everything we were supposed to do. You know, like how'd this fail?" Then we see in the second segment, we have the Secretary of Defense, because once he knows the target's Chicago, his daughter's in Chicago. So he's asking the deputy, I think he's a deputy NSA guy. He's like, he doesn't want to ask the general who's in charge of the nuclear weapons. He's like, because he'll tell me that it'll work. Like, don't bullshit me. Tell me. And the guy tells him, well, if the weapon deploys properly, there's a 61% chance it'll work. And he's like, 61%? He's like, a goddamn coin toss? And he's like, sir, you got to understand. It's like trying to hit a bullet with a bullet. Like, and yeah, the coin did not come up what they called it. So then you see like some FEMA stuff. And they're talking about, you know, the estimated casualties will be somewhere around 10 million, because as long as the bomb's powerful enough, it'll destroy the entire city and surrounding areas. Like minor shout out to Indianapolis there as being depicted as within the radiation zone. So you have that. You have Rebecca Ferguson's character, like her boss doesn't want to leave because he wants to stay there, but she's like, well, you know, you're designated, you know, you got to go. So he goes to the bunker under, like, God only knows how deep underneath the White House, and that's part of like the command and control structure, try to keep some kind of continuity of government in case DC is hit. And it's not until certain parts of the movie that you understand their real concern, because the problem, I mean, the one missile is obviously a problem because Chicago's going to be destroyed. But from the perspective of, will the United States continue to exist? Will humanity continue to exist? The problem is the U.S. can't just let that slide. They have to retaliate. But retaliate against who? And if the answer is Russia, then that's the ball game, because Russia has more nuclear weapons than we do. And the two of us have more nuclear weapons than any, like the next country in line isn't even close. Okay, and people don't understand this. Like, the arsenals of the United States and Russia are gigantic compared to everyone else. Like, the last I heard, China has somewhere around 400 nuclear weapons, whereas ours are in the thousands, and so are Russia's. And so if it's China, well, parts of the U.S. are going to cease to exist, but the human race in all likelihood will continue. If it's us and Russia, then the northern hemisphere is going to become a hell of a lot less populated. And so that's a thing to consider here. That's what the characters are considering. Because, like, no matter which one it is, DC will be a target, because it's the capital, it's command and control, you know. And since most of these characters are in DC, you know, they know that if the missiles really start flying, they've got basically a half an hour to get out of the city. And they're not going to be able to, you know, because one, they've got to stay at their post to make sure everything keeps running up until the moment of destruction. Similar to in By Dawn's Early Light, where the characters at one of the main command and control hubs, they know that a missile's inbound. They know they have X number of minutes before they're deatomized, or atomized. It can't be deatomized, atomized. And they know there's no point in running. You know, the only thing they have left is their duty, and to make sure the other people understand that, like, you know, in X number of minutes, like, this facility and everyone in it will be atoms scattered in the atmosphere. So, you know, make the most of our time and hit those Ruskies where they can feel it. So, in that case, it was the Russians. So here, since they don't know who to hit back, you know, you have people arguing pro and con. You've got people trying to de-escalate, trying to be like, well, if this is it, then, you know, we'll eventually figure out who it was. We'll deal with it then, but we can't go off half-cocked right now. And if it's North Korea, then okay, no problem. We can demolish North Korea without any serious blowback. Whereas if it's one of the other two potential parties, they have the capacity to actually hit the United States. Not successfully, it would be successfully, but reliably is what we're looking for. Okay, whereas with North Korea, this could just be an absolute fluke. And again, the warhead might not even detonate. So yeah, so that's kind of the problem that the president's having, is who to hit and how. And so the guy that's with him, pulls out this book that explains like the levels of how hard to hit and who to hit. And it's up to the president to decide which strike package he wants to go with. And then the machine will spring to life and absolutely decimate someplace. So you have the general who's there in charge of the nukes basically advocating like, it doesn't matter. Let's hit the Russians and the Chinese right now. Hit them so hard that they'll understand not to screw with us. And we can't take the chance that it wasn't one of them. So let's just hit them now and end this. And if we're wrong, well, sucks to be them, I guess. And ultimately, that's what the naval officer that was with him, because he's talking to him, he's like, look, son, like, I need your help here. Like, I need to understand what we're doing. But like, the officer's trying to tell him, like, my job is not to advise you. I'm not your advisor. My job is to explain what this stuff means. And he finally convinces him. And the guy advised him is like, I would go with one of these two plans. I would just end it once and for all. It's like, if you're going to do it, do it. So that's the advice he's getting at the end of the movie. Can't reach his wife because she's on safari in Africa and like the signal's wonky. And yeah, so you've got people that are being selected to go into a deep mine, and I think it's somewhere there in Pennsylvania, to ride it out. Like Jason Clarke's character is trying to explain to someone, like, once they're at a certain point, he's like, all right, well, I've got to call this military base. He's like, why? He goes, well, the Army Corps of Engineers have people there. They need to know that we're here, so that whenever DC is hit, they can come and dig us out of the rubble. And the guy's like, what? He goes, yeah, there's protocol. Like, so yeah, the fact that there is protocol, that someone has thought about it to that degree, and things like that, and the idea of the packages and everything, that this has been considered and studied and planned, and yet at no point was the plan, hey, this is crazy. The plan has always been some kind of variant of, we'll make sure someone survives. To what end? Who knows? I'm not so sure you want to survive something like that. I've always been told that if it ever comes to that, the lucky ones are going to be the people that die in the initial blast. So, and I kind of believe that. So, anyway, yeah, good movie, worth checking out. Like I said, really made me nostalgic for that Cold War feeling of thinking that the world was going to end in nuclear oblivion. Kind of miss that constant sense of existential dread of, this, that, and the other. But also the knowledge that I live relatively close to a priority 1 nuclear target, so, it's a coin toss as to whether or not the initial blast will just take out the town I'm in anyway, so. If not, I have a plan. It's not a good one, but I've got one. It's to leave and get to the nearest hospital that I believe is going to be outside of any of the immediate blast zones, and to get iodine pills as quickly as possible. So, yeah. Hopefully I want to see if that actually pans out. So, yeah. If you are looking for the sense of dread of seeing a scenario, a realistic scenario, that could see us enter a nuclear war against God only knows who, check out this movie. You can vary it a little bit and go with, well, we know exactly who launched the missile, but we still have to deal with our counterattack, which will lead to their escalation, and then the other nuclear powers being like, well, it looks like it's time to settle things for good and all, may as well get our licks in. So, yeah. Watch War Games if you want to see, like, what the escalation looks like. But, yeah. Anyway, hope you folks get the chance to check this out. Let me know down in the comments if this sounds like a good movie or not to you, if you plan on watching it, if you have watched it. If you haven't, and you don't have Netflix, I might somehow encourage you to actually get Netflix and or go to someone's house to use their Netflix, or borrow their password, as long as that's still possible. I hear Netflix is cracking down on that. But yeah, like I said, let me know down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Sharing and commenting help us grow the channel. And thank you everyone who helped us get over 600 subscribers not too long ago. yeah, literally couldn't have done it without you. Appreciate it. Hopefully you stick around. If there's any kind of particular content you want to see, you know, let me know down in the comments. But yeah, that's about all I've got for this one. So just remember, as the quote attributed to Einstein, but I have no idea if he actually said it. I know not with which weapons World War III will be fought, or World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones, because that's about all that'll be left. So, see you folks out there.